welcome to That's Jacqueline. Today I have Stephanie Quilao, also known as Bern Identity on Twitter and other places, to have a discussion about Bernie and the election. Hi, welcome, Stephanie.
Hi. Are we on?
Yeah, we are.
Oh, hi everyone.
So, yeah, we already discussed that video is like one of our least favorite things, but we're here to support
Yes.
Bernie. So, let's kind of just dive in. So, how long have you been a Bernie supporter?
Actually, I discovered Bernie in the summer of 2015. And it's actually surprising that I didn't even know he existed prior to that. But this random YouTube video came through my Facebook stream, and the title of it said, Bernie Sanders pushes back on reporters, which the former corporate marketing PR person in me was like curious about this. So I watched this video. It was only 5 minutes, but this is the longest I had ever watched a politician talk in my entire life. And what just astounded me was how he was saying, the system is rigged against you, right? Meaning us, the people. And prior to that, I had been one of those like apathetic non-voters, right? The DNVs did not vote. Like I just was not political. And a lot of it too is because there's so much
Like
animosity and
good girls
hatred.
don't get into politics kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it's just so, it was just too much for me, right? And then Bernie Sanders comes along. And that's the other thing. I thought, the system is rigged. So what's the point in voting, right? We don't have our leaders aren't elected; they're selected, right, by special
By the
interests.
powers that be.
Yeah. So what's the, what is my one vote is not going to matter. And so here he is saying, no, you're right. The system is rigged against you, and here's how we're going to change it, right? And he starts going off in his plans, and I'm just like, oh my God, who is this guy? So of course, I go on Google and do like massive search on him, and then I just got sucked into this wormhole of Bernie
Yeah, that's
Sanders.
it. That was it, right?
I mean, yeah, and then you watch video after video because I just, and then I could not believe that he's never taken money in his entire like decades long political career. And I'm like, how are you in the Senate and the House that long and you don't take money from any rich people or corporations? It just boggles my mind. And so, yeah, I just got more into reading about him. And then I mean, again, I got sucked in. So I went from apathetic to like 180, and I ended up becoming a delegate for him and went to the convention in Philadelphia as a California delegate, an at-large delegate representing Asian and women voters for Bernie 2016. So
Wow.
like he literally radicalized
He
me.
just like activated you like that quick, right? It was just like
Yeah.
spark.
And a lot of Bernie supporters say this, like when they discovered him in 2015, 2016, it's like something in us got activated. It's like this feeling, you can't even put it into words, but it did. I mean, I'm not the only one. He got like thousands, probably millions of people, and not just in the United States, but globally, right? We see the burn across the planet, and um, yeah, I mean, I just from then on, I just got hooked, and then after the convention, I stayed on continuing to do activism, right? Because his whole point was, this is not just showing up to the polls to vote. It's about getting involved in the political process, right? The way we transform our country is that all of us need to get involved in the process now. And that was another message that really resonated with me. It was like, some of my own personal things, particularly to doing, the issues that I cared about have to do with the food system, right? Particularly GMOs, um, and our health, and and all the amount of money that's spent in lobbying for the sugar lobbies,
Oh, for
the
sure. Yeah.
oil, and like all these processed foods, right? And it's like, what about organic and regenerative agriculture and plant-based eating, all this stuff. And so, you know getting involved in that campaign really ramped up, like it really like brought out the activist in me. And so that was like life changing.
Yeah, that's one of the things I hear a lot from a lot of different guests is how it was like they might have been a little political before, or they weren't because they were just really, dissatisfied with the options out there, and they really didn't trust the system, and they thought that, nothing they did was really going to make any change, and they had kind of sat by, 20, 30 years seeing not really a lot changing from whether it was a Republican or a Democrat. You still were kind of dealing with the same problems, and a lot of people weren't really talking about the problems in between. It was like each party had their own agenda, but there was like this massive amount of policies that really needed to come forward that just weren't being handled. So I like to ask everybody on, what were you doing when you're not advocating for Bernie? So I mean, obviously you've become. It's funny because I have conversations about you to people. When they're talking about like, hey, who should I follow, and who has good information, and who will tell me straight, and I think I mentioned this to you before through Messenger, that you're kind of like you're like that girlfriend that will tell it to you straight, like, you're not fluffing it up, you're not, spinning it, you're just like, hey, this is what I believe in, and this is why I believe in it, and you give really detailed responses for why you do, and that was what kind of drew me to you, was because I was like, wow, she's just speaking from the heart, and she's honest, and she's out there fighting for what she thinks is right. So when you're not doing that, what are you doing with your time?
Yeah. Well, actually, so a little bit background on me so people can better understand like why I'm able to do what I do. So prior, in another life, I spent 20 years in Silicon Valley and had, the typical corporate marketing career. I was very fortunate. I was there during the last Silicon Valley, boom. So I was with a startup that did really well. We all got to be wealthy overnight. So I got to experience that, excitement. And then I worked, at big companies like NVIDIA, Microsoft, a bunch of startups. And then I was the founder of my own startup, a mobile app startup around food and healthy eating. So I had the gamut of that. And then I left all of that because I had a health crisis. And it just like, my spirit, what I believe in, and what I had to be successful in the corporate world were just not in sync. And so it was coming at the expense of my health. So my body was telling me, no,
Yeah, you're
no more
done.
corporate career for you. Got to find something else. So then in the meantime, so I had gained a bunch of weight during my corporate career. So I wanted to lose some weight. So I just, like a lot of people, went on and started a blog to track my weight loss. And all of a sudden it became really popular. And then I started to be able to make like a full-time income blogging about wanting to wear my skinny jeans again.
Because that is something we all want to do. Mine are hanging in the closet, just waiting.
And my blog was called Back in Skinny Jeans. It was talking about the aspiration of how the modern day glass slippers, the skinny jeans, right?
I love that. Yeah, and it's true.
Keep in the closet, and one day, because when I can wear those pants again, life will magically be wonderful. Prince Charming will come. I'll be wealthy. I'll be skinny, and all will be great, right?
I love that.
So I just did that, and so I was a professional blogger for many years actually. Actually back in the day when blogging first started, and then I got on Twitter in 2007, like when it was really like it had just begun, and so then I started this career in social media, and so I've been on Twitter, what now, 13 years now.
Crazy.
Going on 13 years. So I've just become really good at like, how do you do storytelling in a
small, like 180 character way,
whatever
right?
characters we have. And so then I just had this social media career, and then went back into food blogging. I moved from blogging about losing weight to like healthy eating, and that kind of got me a little bit into activism with GMO labeling, because then during trying to lose weight and get healthy, I started to learn about GMOs and like the impact on gut health particularly. That was the thing that got me. And then I was just like, oh, and then the corporate person in me was like, learning about the business model and the market and learning of all these things. And I started watching these documentaries, and it was just like, I could not believe, what I was seeing. Why doesn't the public know about this? So I was using my blogging skills and my, social media influencer abilities to kind of educate people on what was happening, and that like with your health issues, go look, it could be like these foods that are like,
poisons.
yeah, with GMOs and
Yeah.
processing and stuff like that. And then like a lot of my health issues too were also tied to food allergies that I was going to like, fancy big time expensive hospital and they just kept giving me pills.
Oh
And
yeah.
it never dawned on them to test me for food allergies. I went to a
Yeah,
naturopathic
like
doctor who actually was trained. She originally was trained in Western medicine, so she had like the official MD, but then she also had this naturopathic thing. So I liked that she had the two worlds there. And so she tested me for food allergies and sensitivities, and I had like a lot of my issues were tied to that. And like she taught me about like how like preservatives, artificial
oh,
sweeteners,
all
and
those
color,
things.
all that can impact your health. I had no idea. And then like I just went off all of that, and
Boom, here
boom,
you are.
all of a
Now,
sudden,
I think that's fun, interesting that you say that because I find that most Bernie supporters come from a place of passion in some way. They have something that they were passionate about, and then they go out looking for a candidate that maybe is going to represent them in some way. So, in your case, you're worried about health, and you're worried about what's coming into our food and all of these things, and obviously that the fact that there's probably less than stellar um, rules for these foods, like
yeah.
GMOs, it's just like whatever you want to do, smack a label on it. We
Yeah,
don't
the
care, right?
FDA and EPA, like the lack of regulation and studies, and I mean, it's mind-boggling. If people actually knew how little
Oh,
is done to protect us,
yeah,
yeah,
that you know what's going into your food, like how little and how like how close you are for it to being a major issue. I actually had a health issue about 12 years ago that I had a similar kind of experience, and I found that I couldn't eat certain things anymore, and
yep,
it was all because of the toxins. And when I started cutting out processed
yes,
foods, then I was doing so much better. And so that was kind of, I guess, one of the things that drew me to Bernie as well, is that that he's looking at things whole picture. He's looking at the
yep,
American family whole picture, and he's seeing the issues that are out there that aren't really being address. Like, it's not just something you mention in passing and never mention again. He's like, okay, well, let's get something going, let's get a bill going, let's get people activated, let's figure out, let's go talk to everybody on every level layer of local government and see what they'll do
hmm,
about it. So I when I talk to people about you, when I've had conversations in small groups and things about you, they assume that you've always been political. They assume you've always been because you are well spoken, and obviously
hmm,
that marketing degree is like working for you excellently, and because you have a blog, you obviously have some talent in writing. So you've become kind of like this micro influencer for Bernie, and people assume that you are part of the campaign because you're
yeah,
on there talking all the time about him, and you're doing videos, and you're rallying the troops, right? But that's not the case, right? I mean,
yeah. It's not. I mean, it again, like you said earlier. Um, I actually started this account because in 2016 I was doing my Bernie stuff on my personal account, but then that was kind of like, I like to tweet about Bernie all the time, so
yeah,
I thought I'm
so
just
do
going to
I.
inundate my personal account. So I had started the Bern identity on Facebook in 2016, but didn't go on Twitter because it was really toxic there.
Oh, yeah.
It was really bad. And so, but this time around, I was like, okay, I really need to separate the accounts because, again, I could tweet and talk about Bernie
All
literally
day.
all day, every day of the week, like
Yeah.
many,
I feel you. I feel you.
yeah.
It's an
And
obsession.
again, finding people, who you could talk like that. And it's great. That's what I love about like the movement is that I can find other people, who can go on and talk about Bernie and the movement. And again, it's not about him, necessarily,
Yeah,
because there's this image that okay, we're a cult, right? And that
yeah.
we're like sucked in
We're
like this
like,
cultish thing.
all hail
Yeah.
Bernie. Yeah.
And it's like, no, because here's a great sign. If Bernie like pivoted on, Medicare for all, Green New Deal, livable wages, we would all flee.
Oh, we drop off
Right?
like that.
Yeah, we just drop off
Yeah,
the
it'd be
moon, right?
gone.
It's yeah, it's the courage of his convictions, his commitment. He does not waver, right? I mean, he is just solid, and his whole thing is about how do we create a just society that works for the higher good of all. Like, which
Right.
just seems like a no-brainer.
Well, and
Like,
he
I mean,
wants it to be a
really, it's like,
partnership. His idea is
yeah,
like, hey guys, I can't pull all this dead weight together, on my own. We need to let you, wherever you stand, you need to pick up your part of it, and we need to
yep,
get moving forward. And I think that's great because, people like to say things about Bernie's age, and um, but but here's the thing: all of Bernie's ideas would live past him
yes,
because they're human needs. These are
yeah,
things that people need for happiness. If you asked any family, if you sat down with any, like middle or lower income family, and you talked about the problems that they have, the worries they have, the concerns they have, the things that they would worry about, is not being able to afford medical care, not being able to have a retirement, not being able to feed their children, not be able to find
mhm,
affordable housing, for the air not to be clean, for there to be storms of like massive magnitude because the climate has gotten so um, dangerous to us. So those
yeah.
are all things that any family or any individual really are experience. So I wanted to kind of go talk to you about like what is your favorite Bernie policy, and like out of everything. I think I know this, but
Well, here's the thing. So they're the ones that are most important to me, which is Medicare for All and Green New Deal. But here's the one policy that actually is not talked about often, and it should be. And it got me more because having been a small business owner and a
oh
former startup founder. Okay, so here's my favorite policy of his. And he did a bill with AOC on this, that he wants to cap credit card interest at 15%. So those of you who are
yes,
small business owners, and again,
yes,
as a mobile app founder,
right,
so my app, like many, was built on credit cards, right? So we
right,
hire developers, and before we can go out and get funding, right, you need to have a demo. You have to have an MVP or something, right? Which
yeah,
means you. So a
mm-hmm.
lot of us put that on credit, right? And so the interest rates are outrageous, right? And then you
Oh,
like, okay, well, I want to get a. So then you get the new credit card things, like, okay, well, it's like at 28%, but if we do it now and I can get funding, so you play this game and
yeah,
stuff.
you juggle it.
Yeah. And
I'm a small
so,
business owner as well, and I have 2 degrees in finance. So I understand this. So, I mean, I literally, when I was doing a lot of projects, I'm a wedding and event coordinator. And so when I'm doing like corporate events and things like that, that I might not get paid for, 6 months or 9 months down the line from these large corporations, right?
yep.
I have to, finance all of the supplies and things going into these events. And so I would literally like sit out there, okay, here's my credit cards, here's my lines of credit, what's the lowest interest rate, what can I roll the next month onto this one? And
Yep.
it was like, okay, at the first of the month, we roll everything over to this one so we don't pay
Yep.
interest on that one. And then on the first of the next
Yep.
month, we roll everything back. And when I was looking over my financials for the year, I'm like, I had like $60,000 at any given time rolling back from thing to thing while I was waiting to get paid. So yeah, it's extremely important. And now that I'm a student again, I'm going for a marketing degree now. Yeah, because let's just add something to that. But it's the same thing. Now as a student, it's like, okay, how am I going to finance this? Where am I going to put this? And so I'm like, okay, is it worth getting a student loan, or is it going to be, or am I locking myself down into this? So I think that's a really good point. I remember an article I read about him and AOC, and them talking about, how that affects a family, and in an individual, how one credit line can have you
Mhm.
beholden to it 30 years later, right?
Yeah.
If
I mean, you're in this perpetual, endless cycle of paying off your credit cards, which most people never do. And then there's a whole industry that makes money off of buying debt, right? They make
right.
money off of our misery, which again is a whole nother
Yeah.
level of greed that I just can't comprehend. So,
Yeah.
Bernie wants to end that industry, like, on top of that, and again, create a just system. But again, I mean, the biggest thing and I say this too, for small business, I mean, small business owners, like Bernie Sanders, as president, will do wonders for small business
Oh, for
and
sure.
entrepreneurs, right?
And
I
we
mean,
can't, as small businesses, I mean, you are a small business owner as well. And so I mean, I don't think people understand who have never had a small business how terrifying it is to sit down and realize I have to hire employees, but I also need to get them medical care and I need to be able to
Yep.
and I need to give them a good wage and I want my people to be happy and I want to know that when people go home that they're able to cover their bills, right? And
Yep.
that they're not concerned with anything and that they don't have a child that they're afraid to take to the doctor because either I can't afford to provide the medical care because I'm a very small business or
Hmm.
because I'm not paying them enough to cover the co-pays or things like that. So
Yep.
those are like terrifying thoughts for a business owner when you're like I really need the help. I can't grow and I can't keep moving forward unless I have this help. But at the same time, I know I can only make this much more with another person and it's not going to cover their salary and it's not going to cover what I have to pay out in a medical plan. I think that people think that small businesses are just like, oh, I don't want to pay for the medical. It's not that. It's that it's
Yeah.
so insurmountable. So in a system where you have Medicare for all,
Hmm.
small businesses will thrive.
Oh
And
yeah, absolutely.
people who want to work in, I mean, one of the things that I've really enjoyed as a small business owner is when I had either a partner or an assistant or something that worked with me for years that and having that relationship with them and having that friendship and having people who are fighting with you to work towards a good goal, right? That doesn't happen so much in large corporations and things like
Yeah.
that. People come and they go, right? But there's something definitely different about being in a small business situation where
Hmm.
where you can do that. And I think it makes people happier. And as a small business owner, I can, if my assistant says, I have a sick child, whatever, I can work things out and have compassion because I have that relationship with them and like, okay, we'll figure it out. Like you go home for the week, I'll figure it out, right? But in a corporate setting, they don't have that same
Yeah.
care. There's not the same concern. It's like, well, put them in a babysitter. I don't care. If your child's sick, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I think that Medicare for All could like literally solve so many of those problems. And then, doing things like that, like making sure that credit is affordable for small businesses or creating entrepreneur programs that, can, help pay for those things. Those are all excellent. Um,
Yeah.
so we were talking about well, I kind of went into Medicare for all. This has been a really big hot topic, especially in the last week or two. I mean, it's always been a hot topic, but I feel like now the candidates. I mean, we had so many candidates that were like, "Yes, I want Medicare for all," but
Yeah.
but I
Or for who want it.
yeah, but Medicare for who want it. We all want it, dude. Okay,
I know.
like
Really, Trisha.
like whoever for
And really, his plan is just a public option. I don't know what
it's
So
no
he's using
different.
again marketing terms instead of just saying I'm for a public option.
Yeah, and I think what he's working off, I think, but I can never say his name right, Buddy Judge. I think what he's working off of is that people won't know the difference. That he's making it try to sound like it's inclusive. Well, you can keep your plan, or you can do this if you want it. And people are like, oh, well, that sounds fair. That sounds nice. Like, but they don't understand that's not how it works. There's not really people who want it. I mean, there's very few people have any kind of Medicare medical plan that's working for them. Like, I mean,
Well, here's the part of his plan that a lot of people don't know. And in fact, I just learned this recently myself. So under Buttigieg's Medicare for All who want it, um, everyone who's uninsured is automatically enrolled in the system, whether you want it or not.
yeah.
And you could face up to $7,000 in taxes by the end of the year under his plan.
See, and that
So
just to me is
it's like,
terrifying.
wait. So he talks about, wait, well, you should have more choices. And it's like, well, wait a minute.
If you
How is this a choice if under your plan, you are just automatically enrolling all of these people without asking us? So if you're
yes,
uninsured, they just enroll you in the plan. So you have to opt out of it.
right.
And then there will be penalties,
Well, and
right?
that was
Because,
the thing that the problem I had with Obamacare is because it
yeah,
wasn't taken far enough, because it just kind of stopped where it was. It was like, okay, well, you're going to pay for it no matter what. If you can't afford to pay for it, you're going to pay
yeah,
for it in another way. So you're not going to
yeah,
get coverage all year. and you're still going to have to take your child to get their, immunizations, and when you're sick, you're going to still have to go, and you're going to have to get your medications. You're going to pay all that out of pocket. But then
Mhm.
at the end, your reward for not being able to afford the program that would have helped pay for those things is writing a check back to go into a pool so the people who could afford it can't be covered. And
I
someone
know.
with a finance degree, I was just like screaming. And I mean, I have a degree in finance and one in international finance, and so I understand. I mean, I had to study outside plans of their economics of different countries and how they paid for things. And what people are saying, well, you can't pay for that. Well, you can't pay for it. I'm like, you absolutely can. And actually, we can't afford not to, because it's sinking us. I mean, you have people, declaring medical bankruptcy. You have people who not getting the medical care they need, and then they're really sick, and it gets to such a point where they can't work anymore, and then they have to get some kind of assistance to help them. So I mean, it costs us one way or the other. People just don't understand it, and it's like kind of out of sight, out of mind. Well, if I don't see how it's costing us, I don't really care. So I think that's definitely a very large problem. So where do you see it going from now? Because I have just this week alone, what I'm reading, how so many candidates are backing off more and more and more, while still claiming that they support Medicare for all, because obviously Medicare for all with the people has become very popular.
Yeah.
So they're like, well, we don't want to say we don't support it. So it's like they kind of like stamp that Medicare for all thing on their website. And then
Yeah.
there's like this massive list of disclaimers of all the ways that they
Yeah,
don't they
it's
don't
really how
support
they're
it.
positioning it. It's really like here's Medicare with in-app purchases.
Right?
Right? Like if it's an app, well, here it's Medicare for
Yeah,
all. Then
with
here,
all of
click to buy
that.
all
Yeah,
these
it
products.
reminds
And
me
then it's like,
like
wait, that's not really Medicare for all, right? So they're all using these marketing branding tricks when really all
yes.
of them are promoting public option, right? Bernie
Yeah.
is the only one promoting Medicare for all. And as we saw in Iowa, New Hampshire, in the exit polls, 6 out of 10 voters support a single payer healthcare system. They want Medicare for all. So we've already seen in the first two primaries, the caucus and primary states, that voters want this. Okay. So,
Right.
and again, it's not a radical idea. We're first of all, we're the only major country that doesn't do,
Yeah, some
offer
kind of
healthcare as a
universal.
human right.
Uh-huh.
And we're starting with a system that already exists. We're not creating anything new. We're taking existing Medicare and just dropping the age groups, right? So everyone will be covered in 4 years, you know,
Yeah, over
which is
time.
which is
Yeah.
very fast considering
Oh,
how
for
many
sure.
people you have to get in the system. And then for seniors, there will be no more Medicare A through D that you have to deal with. There will be no more enrollment periods
Oh,
because
and the pharmacy. Yeah, I mean
yeah,
they're
like
covering the
people
prescriptions and
people lose their coverage because they miss the enrollment periods, right? And then there's
yeah.
endless forms. We're not going to have that anymore. No more copays, no more deductibles,
And they're
no
going to
more
cover
food.
dental. I mean, that is a
Yeah,
huge thing for
dental,
seniors.
vision, hearing aids, which cost
Yes.
thousands of dollars. But like particularly for seniors, the big thing for them is it covers in-home care and long-term care.
Yeah,
So you can
imagine being
quickly
able to live in
hear,
your home with dignity instead of
yeah.
having to be in a center because that's all you can afford. I mean, I think
But
that
even
that's a big
even
thing.
for a lot of people, they can't afford the center, right? So it's
Right.
like,
So
you
I'm just going to
know,
go off and die. Like
yeah,
they're going to float
family.
me out to sea on an iceberg that no longer exists.
Well,
Like
yeah.
that's
So
yeah.
like a rising percentage of the homeless are now the elderly,
Yeah.
right? So because saying they had like a life-threatening illness and they had other things, and it just evaporated their savings and their retirement funds, right? And their Social Security check isn't that big, and the Republicans are trying to cut it, where Bernie is like,
Yeah.
okay, I want to expand, you know,
Yeah.
Social Security on top of all the other things. But think of all the money that we're actually going to save under a Sanders presidency. And so, that's when I talk to voters, I say, okay, when you're looking at all the plans, who is going to impact your paycheck directly the most,
Yeah.
right?
Well, I
So
think
the plans, it's
so.
have lots more money.
I just lost audio there.
Yeah, I lost feed.
Oh.
Oh,
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I lost you just for a second. So, yeah, one of the things that I looked at when I was looking over kind of if it was, are we still good on audio? Okay. Was that, like the whole symbioticness of the plan. So, if you're just taking a lot of money and throwing it towards one plan without considering all of the other things like where money is going to still need to go and things, then then it can become, disastrous from a business standpoint, right? But Bernie's plans are like, there's from, cradle to grave. Like he has a plan, everything from, like preschool and education and childcare and, medical care and housing and infrastructure and the Green New Deal that kind of encompasses all of that under one umbrella, really. And they all work together.
mhm.
It, if he comes in, people are like, well, that's so, he's asking for everything. And they don't understand that really you have to. It's just like any other kind of business plan. And when you look at it, you have to look at all the problems and see where people are suffering, where they're starving, where they're going bankrupt, where they're running into problems where they can't work because they can't afford childcare for their child, where they're running into problems in education later because their children, didn't get a good preschool, where they can't afford to send their kids to a good college. I mean, all of these things work together. If you do them together instead of trying to piecemeal them like we've seen in the past decades, where it's like,
Yeah.
pick one you like and we'll work on that. Maybe we're going to promise you 10 things, but pick one you like and you'll get like a quarter of that one, right? So if you put more effort into making sure there isn't a solution in place. That was one of the things, like I said, that I really liked about Bernie is that he didn't leave anything out of the mix. There wasn't anything left, like hanging there. There weren't any danger signs because, just like with anything else, if you don't project ahead, how a child is going to get all the way up through their life and live successfully and get an education and find employment and get medical care. If you don't do those things, then you run into a problem. We're going to take a really quick break and we will come back in a second. Thanks.
All over this country, you got a lot of bright, good people. They're saying, you know what? Situation is hopeless. If you can't beat the billionaires, you can't win. I'm giving up. That is exactly what they want us to believe. Do not enter that world of despair. Despair is not an option. Not just for you, but for your children and your grandchildren and for the future of this planet. Our job is to give people hope. The problems we face did not come down from the heavens. They are made by bad human decisions. And good human decisions can change them. As powerful as the 1% and the corporate elite are, when the bottom 99% stands up and does not allow themselves to be divided up by Trump and his friends, there is nothing that will stop us.
Hi, welcome to That's Jacqueline. I'm back with Stephanie Quilao from Bern Identity, and we're going to talking about Bernie today and the campaign and the policies and some of the things that that we're concerned with and some of the things that we can do. So, one of the big things that drew me to you was how good you are at advocating for Bernie and basically for your fellow man, for the policies that you think are important. So let's kind of talk about what are some of the things that you can do to get involved with the Bernie campaign and help see things through.
Well, so here's one of the biggest points in this election that's very different from 2016. So in 2016, we had this issue with super delegates, and because of the Bernie campaign and in the Hillary campaign, the DNC, they did this unity commission or committee, and one of the big things that came out of that is the super delegates will not be involved in the first round of the election, which is a big deal because the mainstream media was confusing voters, integrating super delegates who are unpledged delegates into the voter count, to make it seem like, oh, like Hillary's running away with it, when
Right.
really that wasn't the case. So what's very important for people to know this time around is that we have an opportunity now for Bernie Sanders to win the nomination in the first round without any super delegate interference. So, but the key is that he has to get more than half, and that number is 1,990 delegates
Okay.
that we need to win in the primary caucus race. Period. Right? That's round one.
Okay.
Round two. So if nobody gets to that 1990, then it goes to round two, where all the delegates at the convention center are now released from their candidate,
Bonds.
and they can vote for whoever, and then the super delegates get involved, and then that's where the super delegates can take over. So
Yeah, that's where it gets kind of
have to
muddy
work, like, our butts off
to make sure that doesn't
make
happen.
sure that it's important that we not just win the state, we have to win the majority of delegates in that state to reach that 1,990. So in 3 weeks, we have coming up the biggest day out of the whole primary, and that is Super Tuesday. 1,344 delegates are up on that one day. So we have 14 states and the American Samoa caucus is happening, right? So that's 15 races and 1,344 delegates, which I think is like a third. I mean, that's like a huge number on that one day. So we need everybody to, like,
hit the ground.
and hit the ground. So here's the thing. More elections are won when there is a higher level of direct contact with voters. And so what that means is either phone calls, either going out canvassing, knocking on doors in your neighbors, doing tabling events at your local farmers markets, your local community events, and then family events, right? When you're going talking to your personal family and friends. So the more that you can go out and talk to people, the better it is. And, answer, people's questions and stuff. But on the Bernie site, and also I have on all my accounts too, is, he has specific links where you can sign up to either phone bank, text, Canvas, or there's a generic volunteer sign up where they have other things to volunteer. Like you can be a Bernie victory captain, which is a super volunteer in your area where they give you special privileges and things as a super volunteer to rally in your area, right? In whatever state that you live in. And again, this is going to be very important on Super Tuesday because Bernie can only be at one place at one time.
Right.
And we got 15 races, happening on that one day. So it is imperative, particularly on that day for that election, that we step it up because, again, 1,344 delegates is a whole lot. Like if we win 1,000 delegates on that one day, I mean, that pretty much is anyone else to catch up is just going to be
impossible.
Hard.
Well, and we kind of saw the problems with this, right? Because I mean, we did overall, we still did good in Iowa and we still did good in New Hampshire, but there was all that dispute and there was all that mess and all of that going with that. That can't happen if you turn out in massive numbers. When you bring the landslide in,
really flood the field with votes. Yeah, so all these shenanigans.
Yes.
That could possibly happen if we literally flood the voting polls, the places with millions and millions of voters. There's only so much manipulation that can be done.
Exactly. I mean, when you have people lined up around the state, then there's a little bit of an indication that Bernie won, right?
Yeah, and that's the big difference between what Bernie's doing and the other campaigns is, focusing on mass movement politics strategy, where you focus on expanding the electorate by reaching those first-time voters, the disenfranchised, the unmotivated, the apathetic. So in 2016, there was 91 million DNVs, did not vote, okay? Which is almost 1.5 times the amount of people that voted for Trump. Okay, so this notion that we need a centrist candidate to win to get more Republicans and
No.
conservatives is actually a false narrative, because what we actually need is someone who can energize the 91 million of those DNVs who, again, were like me in 2015. Like, what's the point? It's all rigged, and I don't have any good choices. They're all the same, And that's another thing about Bernie, is that he doesn't politic. When he
Right.
talks to you, he's
He just
talking to
tells you
you
the
like
truth.
person to person. He's not
Mm-hmm.
trying to his ego is like removed from the equation, right? And he's just telling you like, look, this is how it is. Here's some facts, and here's how we're going to change it, right? And we're going to
Right.
bring it back to the people. And because again, it doesn't matter. I mean, if you go across the political spectrum, right, from left to right, up and down, most Americans agree that corporations and billionaires are out of control. They have too much power, too much influence, and that has got to end,
Right.
right? And so it's time to put the interests of the people first. And so that's why we have an opportunity in this race. And that is why, Bernie has just, stayed consistent. And he's now, the mainstream media is now finally calling him the front runner that he's always been.
Yeah, it
Right?
took him
So
a
it's
while.
like,
Yeah.
okay, let's finally call him the front runner, because front runner status is not even just about like, okay, winning the primaries, but it's also the number of volunteers you have, how much money you're
Right.
raising, like how many
The
grassroots
interest.
organizations, how many unions are, backing you. Like Bernie has this massive infrastructure that also will continue on the day after the election. That's the other thing. For the other campaigns, their supporters will go back to their lives doing whatever.
Yeah.
The Bern supporters, the movement, were like, we know that the election, Bernie becoming president, is just the beginning.
Right.
It's not the end, because we're here to transform the country. So
Right.
getting involved is also not just, phone banking and canvassing, which is very important because we got to get those delegates. It's afterwards too that you stay involved
in your local governments, right? And getting the word out and talking to people. That's the one thing that I really have enjoyed seeing is, Bernie has given birth to this massive movement. All of the progressives that be have come out of the woodwork and said, you know what, it is possible. They told us it wasn't. They told us we had these highfalutin dreams. But you know what? It's possible, and now's the time, and I'm going to do it. And you have all these amazing candidates who are running out in their local things. I don't care if it's the PTA. You get your butt out there, and you represent, and you talk to people, and you tell them the truth, and you tell them, like, why you're concerned with things the way they are. And you organize. If that's you, two people, then fine. Then it's two people. But you do it where you're at. Two people is better than one. You get up and you get moving.
It's better than zero.
Right, exactly. It's better than zero. Exactly. So that's the one thing that I've really enjoyed is seeing all these new candidates pop up, and I get messages from, that's it. I'm running for Congress. All right. Yes, let's do it. Right. So, yeah, I think that's definitely important. So one of the questions, because I get a lot of people who message me directly, because I'm kind of an in-between person. I'm not fancy like you. I'm just, a single mom, business owner who, has concerns about the things I see. And, I have my understanding at my level of what it is, but I'm not a politician, and I'm not, somebody who studied politics. I just became extremely interested when I saw things were going to hell in a handbasket, frankly. And I decided, you know what? I'm going to do my part where I can, where I stand to do what I can. And so people send me, questions and messages and say, hey, what can I do about this and what can I do about that? So I thought you would be a perfect person for us to kind of go into that. So I have a few very simple questions, and you can give me, give them the answer for that. So, okay, so I'm a citizen and I've never voted for before. What do I do? What do I do? I want to vote for someone. What do I do? What's the first step?
A very easy step is to go online and go look up either, if you're like a registered Democrat, go to your state Democrat Party website. You can go to your local county voter registration, right? You can just type that into Google, right? Right. I want to register to vote, and it will pop up like, okay, here's all the places you can do that. Like, it's very simple,
right?
But you can do it online now. You don't even have to leave your house.
Oh
You
yeah,
can do it on your phone, on your laptop. So you can start there.
and it's
very
important if you are registered to make sure you keep checking it, because I found recently, a few months ago, when I checked it, it was not showing me as registered, so I re-registered. So that's really
Good.
important. Okay, so we've got that. So they're registered to vote now. So now they're like, okay, I've decided I want my, I've got my candidate. I've researched the candidates, right? And I've decided Bernie's my guy. That's what they should be saying, right? Bernie's my guy. Now what can they do at that level? They've never done anything politically. What would be the most logical first step for them to get involved in a campaign? What's like the easiest, simplest thing that they can do?
The easiest thing to do is go to berniesanders.com to the volunteer section.
Right.
And in the volunteer section, there's a whole list of action items that you can do to get started. Another thing on the berniesanders.com site is if you do berniesanders.com/your state, like California, Iowa, New Hampshire, they will have specific information for your state. Like I'm in California, and they have this whole thing on like if you want to go early voting, what do you do if you have an NPP ballot but you didn't want that? And like this whole, and then they have like the field offices, phone numbers, contact information, the events and rallies that, where Bernie's going to be showing up pretty soon.
They had like a whole map that showed up that it was like lit up blue, like so here's all the places you can go see.
Yeah, but definitely up through the Super Tuesday. If you're in up from now to a Super Tuesday state, go to berniesanders.com/ and type in your state, write out the whole state name. And there's information there right there. But the volunteer section is a great way to start, and it's really easy.
Great. What about the app? That was something I discovered a few months ago.
Yes, and that is listed in, information is listed in the volunteer section on that too, but the Bern app.
Yes.
Bern. So it is, you can find it on the Apple Store and the Google Store.
Okay.
You download the app, and in the app is where you can either upload contacts or put in contacts, your family, your friends, your neighbors, or when you're going out canvassing, or when you're just, when you're talking to people. Like I have on my laptop, I have Bernie stickers on my laptop, and so I work in coffee shops often. And and now I've noticed more than ever, like people have been coming up to me. So
and talking to you.
Put a Bernie sticker on your laptop.
Right.
In coffee shop, and people will approach you.
I was at the grocery store.
Says, ask me about Bernie. Put it on my laptop.
I saw someone painted their entire car, and I'm pretty sure it was spray paint, but they had painted their entire van yesterday. At the grocery store at St. Bernie Now, and it had, I mean, and I was just like, yes, I'm like, where is this person? I need to find this person. Yeah, so sometimes just getting that out. I live in a very red state, so it's definitely surprising when I come into people and they're like, oh, and they're like, so am I. Yeah, and so it's kind of nice just to get that, that side of things. One of the other things that I liked about the app is that once you're signed up for the app, then you can sign up for other activities, and you can also sign up to get the texts. The texts are really helpful for me because I've got a small business, and I'm a student, and I'm doing the podcast, because let's just add a few things on there, right? And the text remind you, like, there's a Bernie event coming up, and these are the ways that you can help. So I think that's really important too.
Oh, that's important. That's a good point too. Besides the app, is to sign up for Bernie's email list.
Yes.
So again, berniefounders.com, and you will find information. But sign up for that email list and for text messages, because, like you said, they will give you reminders of things, or even things like during the debates, like, hey, Bernie's on the debate stage.
Yeah, quickly, hop on.
Debate's funny, and then it's kind of fun, because then we have these things where the last two debates we've raised, I know at least one of them, we raised over $1 million during the debate itself.
Yeah, it was insane.
It's really exciting, and it's like, and then we raised $25 million in 1 month in January, which was just like astounding. To raise that. I mean, we could potentially raise $100 million in this one quarter alone. So, that's pretty amazing in terms of like funding. But yeah, get on that Bernie Sanders email list. And again, you will get a lot, but if you're really into the campaign, it really does. It helps you keep up to date. They also do it regional, so they'll remind you, hey, look, like in California, the last day to register online is February 18th. So he'll send us an email or a text reminding Californians of this, right?
Right.
Or like, your primary is on this day. So you get those reminders because again, like you said, we get all busy and we're running around and we forget
And
these
get
things
distracted.
and the
Yeah.
texts and emails, will help you stay on top of that.
Yeah. So one of the
Oh, and
things.
one last thing about the Burn app
Sure.
is also take the time to do your My Bernie story. So when you do your
Yes.
My Bernie story, that's a great way to share with other people, why you support Bernie Sanders, right? And they can also share your story with other people, like, oh my God, I saw her story and like it convinced me to vote for Bernie. And then they can send it to, their circle, right? So it just extends this influence. But like when you go and see like these 2-minute videos of people doing their My Bernie
I
stories,
love
you also get a glimpse of this movement. And really, you will cry. I tell people like, get the
Yeah.
tissue because you will cry and your heart will get big and you will be happy and you'll be sad, but you'll be sad and then like in the happy way because you're like, oh my God,
In the happy
it's finally
way.
happening. People are coming together. Like we can have a better world, right? Because I
Right.
think a big thing too is culturally, I think we're so trained to believe that we can't have nice things. We
Yeah.
can't have we can't have healthcare.
Don't
We
dream
can't
too
have
high. Don't dream too high. Just
like
stay in your box.
yeah.
Don't look
And it's like,
outside the
oh,
box. Keep the box
yeah,
tightly shut.
yeah, like don't have any hope, and I know for too a lot of people were really disappointed with Obama, right? Because he ran as a progressive, hope and change, and that didn't happen, and that's a big reason how we ended up with a Trump,
Yeah.
and how again running another neoliberal corporatist is not how you defeat Trump because that's how we got him in the first place. We need someone like a Bernie he's an FDR Democrat with a
Right.
New Deal populist message that resonates across the spectrum, right? Again, healthcare is a human right.
Yeah.
People should have
Imagine
livable
that.
wages. We should have a livable planet, right? We should have what? Flint still doesn't have water.
Yeah.
This is
Children should be able to eat
ridiculous.
little things like that.
Yeah, right. I mean, basic things like, and I think a lot of people just are cynical about politics because we've just been trained and beaten and defeated so many times that when someone Bernie comes around, it's almost like I just can't believe that, right? That we can actually defeat all the billionaires and the corporations because they've controlled us for so long. But see, that's how they have power over us
Yeah, they've
because they
conditioned
want us to
us.
think that we have. Yeah, they've conditioned us to believe that we don't have any power. But again, there is literally more millions and millions of us than these billionaires and corporations who try to buy their way through things. And Bernie not only is saying these things, you can believe him because he's got decades of receipts. Like he's
Right.
proved over and he's not taking any money from them. So he's not going to get elected and pivot, and take a list from Citigroup of who to put in his cabinet, right?
Exactly.
There will be in a Sanders administration, there will be no billionaires, no former executives, no lobbyists. There will only be people who have the interest of, who have a history of fighting for the working class and who represent the interests of the people, right? And
Yeah.
it will be diverse. And my guess is too that Bernie's administration will have the most women than any administration we've ever
Oh, I
seen
think so.
in the White House. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so just because of how women are, just of what their motivations are in general. Like he's looking for people who are motivated by the right things, and that is women in a lot of cases. So you made an excellent point. I mean, so people, you can parallel and say, well, Obama promised all these things and we never got them. Well, Obama had a laundry list of people that he had to appease. So the whole time
Yep.
he was in
Yep.
office, he was still ticking off all of his checks. And,
Yep.
he had a few left over. So then they decided they'd run Biden so he could, continue down the list. Bernie doesn't have that. Bernie's going to hit the ground running and he's going to be like, okay, I promised all these people these things and I'm going to get them, and so there's definitely a different, just an entirely different game plan from what, because, I hear that a lot. Well, Obama promised that, so tell me why. And I'm like, yeah, he promised it, but that wasn't his main motivation. Those
Exactly.
were pretty words, and pretty words, don't get you anywhere. And Bernie, has shown through the last 40 years exactly what he stands for. I loved this week the media was trying to say, well, he's never changed and he comes up with nothing new. And I'm like, exactly. No, but here's the
Why
thing,
is that bad?
that they were trying to make it bad because, you could actually rely on what he said, and there wasn't any surprises. I'm sorry, but I'm cool with that.
Bernie, what you see is what you get.
Yeah,
That's it.
right.
What you see is what you get.
Exactly. So, and I also liked the point you made about the Bernie story. I think that's really important, especially if you live in an area where maybe you're a little bit more cautious about, talking to other people, or maybe you're just a shyer person. I think doing your Bernie story and then sharing it on your social media and sharing it with friends and family, it's a very non-confrontational way of
Yes.
expressing what it is that's in your heart that you truly
Mm-hmm.
feel, and allowing people to look at it and make up their own mind. And they know, and your friends and your family and those who love you, they know you're a good person. So when you put it out there, they know that it's not a spin, it's not a political spin, it's a,
Yeah.
this is how I feel about things, and I'm really hoping
It's
that
coming
you'll,
from your heart.
yeah, that it's
Yeah.
coming from your heart, and I'm really hoping that you can see some sense in this, and that you'll consider it and you'll take a minute. So I think that the Bernie stories are really good. I have had like weeks where, this entire political landscape has frustrated me to such a point that, and I know you and I have talked about this too, that it sometimes it's just so hard because we're trying so hard to get, good things happening, and we're seeing all these smear campaigns, and looking at those Bernie stories have been just like, they've just like, oh yay, okay, I remember why I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna do this again
Yep.
tomorrow,
Yeah.
because that person needs me. And I think that's one of the things, like, that, and we probably should end on this, but that's one of the things that, is different about Bernie and any other candidate. It's not me, it's us, right?
It's us.
And so,
Yeah.
and that us is,
Exactly.
it's not just our us following Bernie. It's us being there for each other, right? It's us being,
Mm-hmm.
being willing to see other people and say, you know what, you're worth it to me. And if you need something, if your child needs to go to school, if you need daycare, if you need Medicare for all, if you need housing, if you need a world you can breathe in and your children can run around outside and play in, I'm there for you. I'm going to make sure that you get those things. And, if whatever that takes, I'll vote it into practice if that's what it takes.
Yeah.
So, um,
Exactly.
well, I think we kind of covered everything. I'm going to go ahead and put all of your links below of all the ways that people can get in touch with you
Awesome.
and follow you. Thank you so much for joining me. This is like was so helpful,
Yeah.
and I look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. This was
Thanks a
great.
lot.
And vote for Bernie
Yes, vote
Sanders.
for Bernie Sanders. Register to vote. Get out there and vote. Go talk to your neighbors. Vote,
Yeah.
please. Thank you.